Growing up, what did your parents do or make you do that was supposed to build character or teach you a lesson that in the long run just messed you up or made you worse? I was always taught to not speak unless spoken to, and now I find it weird to initiate conversation and people who don't know me think I'm uptight. Same here. My dad would shoot me down anytime I tried talking to a grown up. I think it really fricked up my social skills. Inadvertently teaching me to lie all the time. Punishing us when we told the truth. Punishing worse when we were caught in a lie only showcased that lying is a gamble. A gamble that is totally worth it if you can get away with it 9 times out of 10. I'm pretty sure I just stopped being honest with my parents after the age of 10 and never turned back. Not complimenting us or saying I love you. They said no one will say good job when you grow up, just do the things you need to do. And my mom said her parents never said they loved her and she turned out good, so shouldn't either. I'm not sure she turned out good. Screaming, calling names, unreasonably harsh punishments, not allowing any input or defense. Example, my little brother got in the mud when my stepdad was taking a nap. I got him out and told him to wait on the porch while I grabbed a towel. When I came back, he had gone inside my parents' bedroom and climbed on the bed, waking up my stepdad. So my stepdad slapped my face and dragged me outside by my hair. My mom never really did much about the way he treated me because at the end of the day they believed it would prepare me to deal with crappy situations in the real world. But in reality I just learned how to be abused and stay stuck in abusive situations. My dad only ever said one true thing. The first thing you learn is natural. All else is learned behavior. Frick anyone who thinks that abuse in childhood is a good way to deter abuse in adulthood. Not being open and loving with each other. I find it really hard to open up to people because I could never open up to my family. The same with physical affection. I don't like hugging people or being hugged that much, and I find it quite awkward because I never really hugged anyone when I was growing up. My parents made me shave all my hair when I was in high school because they somehow believed it was a distraction and not having hair would improve my grades. I went from being this confident extroverted girl to someone who couldn't look anyone in the eyes, and I struggled with esteem issues for the longest time. Thanks mum and dad. I am so sorry. That is one of the most horrible and ridiculous things I have read in this thread, and really I hope you're doing better now. Not saying sorry. Apologizing somehow meant admitting weakness to her, so I never apologized for things I did for a long time. And in turn, neither did she. Eventually as I aged, it made me overly apologetic. Trying to train myself not to say sorry for things beyond my control now. Being an overweight child into my teenage years, my mother would try tactics to help me lose weight rather than helping provide me with a healthy diet. One Christmas 80% of my gifts were clothes that were 2-3 sizes too small. As a kid teenager, Christmas is a big deal, and to not only get mostly clothes, but clothes that didn't fit was so sad. I'll never forget that. Not fighting back against my bullies. I was supposed to just walk away from confrontation and be the better person. But unfortunately bullies, in particular children, don't really think that way. Not letting me have a social life. Couldn't go out with friends. Didn't have a cell phone. Constantly regarded with something that can only be called suspicion. Suck it up. As in only girls and queers cry, suck it up, be a man. I was 5, Bunny died. Didn't shed another tear until I had kids of my own. My lesson to them, let it out. It's not healthy to bottle crap up. I hate that. My dad would do this to me and my mom would back him up. They beat me and would kick me out of the car and drive away so I could walk home a lot. I think I was a sensitive little kid, so they thought physical and mental abuse would make me stronger. It doesn't. It makes you cantankerous. My dad was a dong. There's no other way to put it. NGL. He's still a dong. But I've learned that he's also afraid of everything, and I'm not scared of him anymore. He would hit me all the time, over anything. My brother starts a fight with me, I get the belt. I don't get something cleaned in time for them, belt. I've had black eyes, and was chased down the street with a car, almost ran over. He told me when I was 16 that he is tough on me because he knows I'll be the responsible one when I grow up. No butthole. Now I resent you and hate my siblings. They had it easy, never got into trouble like I did, yet they acted 10 times worse. Now I need therapy. They don't. I have PTSD. They don't. I'm afraid of people. They aren't. They think I'm a terrible person because I'm very open about how much I despise my dad. But they don't get it. They may have been there, but they didn't have to endure it. I did. One more story. I remember being 8 years old, sitting on the side of the bathtub hyperventilating while he screamed at me and hit me. My mom just sat there. She never said a word. When he was done, she sat beside me and she held me. At 16, she gave me a black eye, and I'll never forget that. It was on my birthday. I'd been invited to Atlanta to be in a friend's music video, and I asked to go. That's all. I just asked. Now, at 23 she tells me I'm her best friend. I freaking hate my family. If it's any consolation, I hate your family now too. My parents divorced when I was young. As a result, I ended up spending a lot of time with one of my grandmothers after school and during the summers so my mother could work full time. Dad worked and the military wasn't really around to help. My grandmother had severe anxiety issues. I know this now, in my 40s. She was a good woman with a big heart, but she really contributed to a frickload of issues for me. She was hyper concerned about what others thought of her. Appearances were everything. From her digging her nails into my ears to be sure they were clean before we went into stores, to saying my shirt or something was dirty from playing and I should sit in the car so people didn't think I was a slob. It never ended. She adopted an injured cat. She loved pets. She asked for help unloading her car from shopping trips, but I couldn't unload the litter or cat food if the neighbor above her might see. She was always concerned about who might see or know something. Everything to her was potentially fatal or life-altering. I understand why. Her father was an alcoholic. Her brother committed suicide. And my grandfather had a massive stroke in the prime of his life, and as a result they lost their life savings to medical care for years. When someone was injured or in the hospital, she knew it would end in death. If my mother was late picking me up, she surely had an accident. It was exhausting. Anyway, I've struggled with never feeling good enough and always worried too much about what others thought or said about me. My anxiety has almost destroyed my life. I believe some of this is likely genetic. I have anger issues as a result of that, mainly at myself. I work on it and so on. Unfortunately for her, she never got real treatment for nerves because that stuff was only for crazy people. I loved her and I hated her. It shaped some of the worst parts of my life, and it was all unnecessary if she had gotten treatment or if I knew how to express to my parents how much I was taking it and internalizing it. I feel like I'm going through this right now with my own mom. Not let me do anything that was a normal child thing to do. The idea being it would make me make full use of my higher than average intelligence. For the most part it made me lazy and arrogant at school, and unable to connect to my peers because we shared no interests. I still struggle socially. I learned to not have feelings because I'd get bad consequences or be put down for them. So now I hide them, or at least do a lot, and I work a lot on changing that. My dad used to try to get me to finish my dinner by putting me outside in the dark and telling me monsters would get me. I was terrified. Whenever I didn't want to eat my food, he'd threaten to put me outside again. He usually would. Now I feel incredibly stressed about eating with others. Doesn't matter if they're friends or family, it all makes me horrifically anxious. Oh man, my dad did this to me too. He had a lot of other weird food punishments which mean I can't eat like a normal person. Way to ruin meals forever. In general, I wasn't allowed to question them, or I had an attitude if they did something that upset me. The result? I can't be assertive, especially when it comes to people older than me, like treating me horribly for example. I freeze. I can't speak up to adults even though I'm an adult now. My parents forced me to drive several times when I had my temps. They would drive me to tears and panic. The one time I read RPMs instead of MPH because I was so scared and upset. Another time he criticized me because he thought it would make me want to prove him wrong. No, Dad, I'm a sensitive girl. All you made me do was feel like crap and think I can't drive. He later admitted I was driving okay and that the shape of the hood actually messes people up. My older brother struggled too. I've had my temps license for almost a decade, and I'm still scared. I need encouragement, not threats. My mom was essentially verbally emotionally abusive when I was young. I would cry to my dad and he would say, you know she loves you. She's just bad at showing it. Now I don't leave friends relationships who treat me horribly because they love me, right? They're just bad at showing it. I trust words over actions and it's turned out awfully. I'm getting better, but dang, it's still a hard process. Just recently I realized that no, my mom doesn't love me. Love doesn't act that way. It was depressing, but it's also freeing. I don't owe her my love or loyalty. Mass punishment. There were 5 kids from about 13 years old. One mom. Dad was almost constantly traveling for work. Whenever mom found something out of line with her tidy house, she'd line us up, ask who did it. First couple times, the culprit would speak up, proceed to get a beating, while the rest of us awkwardly drifted out of the room as unobtrusively as possible. After a while of that, nobody would speak up, because 4/5 were usually innocent, and the one didn't want to get beat. So she started beating all of us, to make sure the guilty one was punished. Never as hard though, so it was still better for the guilty one to stay quiet. Main thing I took away was that I couldn't expect fair treatment because I did the right thing. Which, yay, what a lesson to learn at 13. A lot of yelling and screaming every time I did something wrong makes a kid learn to be a compulsive liar at a young age, and something that now that I'm 20 is a pain in the butt to try and stop being. I was told football was gay and rugby was a man's sport. I was forced to play rugby until it became apparent that I was never going to be big enough to take it anywhere. That sparked the whole toxic masculinity thing, which took about 2 decades to finally shed. I'm sure this is a common story. My father constantly criticizes me for not being a man, and not doing manly things like sports, and not being a perfect freaking replica of him. He then wonders why I refuse to talk to him. The cry it out method. They didn't want me to learn to get attention by crying. So when I was a baby, whenever I started crying in the middle of the night, they just left me until I stopped on my own. My mom told me all of this. Problem was this continued through my toddler years and childhood. I felt very emotionally disconnected from my parents and still do even today. I'm naturally a very emotional person and cry easily, and I always felt like it was wrong to cry. So I hid it from my parents, which led to me hiding a lot of other emotions that I was feeling in my teenage years: anxiety, depression, etc. This can lead to reactive attachment disorder if taken too far. You learn as a baby that nobody will come for you when you need them, and it fricks up relationships forever. Force me into overstimulating situations. I have mild autism. To desensitize me and make me stop acting up, spank me, punish me both for telling the truth and lying, and criticize me constantly until I was her ideal daughter. I was, and still am, terrified of my own mother. Terrifying is not what mothers are supposed to be. After 29 years I finally told her to get out of my life. It's the scariest thing I've ever done. Way to go. Good for you. It must have required immense strength and bravery. Always respect your elders. Took some time to realize this while growing up, but eventually I learned. Sometimes old people are buttholes that do not deserve respect on their name. Work hard, not smart. Both of my parents are in lines of worth where they must work physically hard for not that much money. After seeing the toll it has on them, it makes me want to work smart rather than strenuous. Taking care of household chores. My brother and I'm the oldest, did all of the household chores. Vacuuming, dusting, the entire household's laundry, 5 people total, dishes for said household, bathing dogs, cleaning our bathroom, etc. The only chores that we did not do were cleaning my parents' room, bathroom, and cooking dinner. I think the idea was that we'd learn to take care of ourselves when we moved out and we'd be tidy people. I didn't hate it so much then, but thought it was unfair that my parents did nothing. Turns out that they're just lazy bastards who were high or drunk all the time, and the joke's on them. I absolutely hate cleaning now. Between me and my equally as messy husband, our house constantly looks like crap. I know. If it takes under 3 minutes, do it now. But even if it takes 45 seconds, I don't want to do it. That being said, I really don't like being so messy and I'm working on changing it. Baby steps. I have something similar. I didn't have to do all the chores, but my mom is a neat freak and would always drag me into cleaning with her, even when I didn't think the house needed to be cleaned. At 22, I now hate cleaning and think it's a waste of time. I don't much like being touched or communicate affection through touch. So my mom tried to always be in my space to show me it was okay, or something, like make me give her hugs, make me let her do beauty treatments, randomly grab my hands or arms, that sort of thing, make me hug all family members and her friends. Really only made the problem that I hate being touched a lot worse, I think. Also other effects she didn't like. As an adult she combs her fingers through my hair at random, so I always wear it in a tight bun at home. Or I'd be on the lookout for being randomly grabbed or touched, that sort of thing. My mum was told by a pediatrician that this kind of behavior was the best way to desensitize me to being touched, with similar results to yours. I don't really blame her because she thought she was doing the right thing, but frustratingly she still doesn't understand she did more harm than good. There was a lot of tough love, a lot of where did the other 15% go, on a test, and a lot of you're fine. Stop being so dramatic, buck up. A lot of denial about issues going on because not acknowledging them was necessary to not feed into them, which in some ways was a really good thing and other ways not so much. I have trouble opening up or being vulnerable, and I have very high expectations of myself and an intense fear of disappointing others. A lot of therapy went into realizing that I don't have to be fine all the time, and that I don't always have to be perfect, and that expressing problems is not hypochondria or hysteria. Telling me that my mental illnesses didn't exist. When I was about 13 or so I was diagnosed with depression, anxiety and a form of OCD. My mom immediately ripped me out of anything mental health related and told me that they're all greedy pill pushers who are trying to make a profit off of me and that I'm just lazy and ungrateful and I need to get my crap together. She drilled all of this into my head for years. I'm not depressed. I'm just lazy and making up excuses. I'm not anxious because anxious people do this and I'm just making excuses. I don't have OCD. I'm an attention seeker with bad habits. I'm a deadbeat and I'll never amount to anything. etc. etc. If I just do something with my life I won't be depressed or anxious. She doesn't know about my suicide attempt, or how I idealize the thought of it consistently. Nowadays, she'll see someone talking about depression or anxiety on TV and say gosh, I can't even imagine what that's like or how hard that would be, not realizing I've been suffering in silence with them this whole time. Now as an adult, I feel a great deal of shame regarding it all. I'll hit a really rough patch and start thinking that I'm just a whiny bee who can't even handle the simplest of tasks and I'm not ill. I'm just a failure. I'm unmedicated, not in therapy. I know I probably should take better care of it but my brain just echoes her words. I'm faking it, I'm just lazy, stupid, weak. I really second guess myself, especially when I hit a span where things aren't so bad. That, among other things, gave me a really fricked up self-image. I've had my stepfather say numerous times that my diagnosed ADD isn't real because you can sit and read a book or play your stupid games, so I've never gotten help for it. Even now as an adult, who's failed out of college twice, I have a hard time seeing it as anything other than just a weakness of my character. Crap is awful yo. Not my parents, but the headmaster at the strict boys school I went to. I had been doing the usual goofing off, which got me detention. Got called up the next day to ask why I hadn't shown up. Apparently there was a role you needed to sign on to, but nobody told me about that. So he gives me the benefit of the doubt and asks me to tell him where I sat. Front, middle, I reply. He takes me up to the classroom and shows me that, in the front row, the middle two desks have been removed to make way for the teacher's desk. In his mind, that means that I was lying, not referring to the second row, i.e., the closest two desks in the middle row, to the front. So I get the cane for supposedly missing detention. Never, ever trusted authority since. My dad used to, keyword there, stand on my feet and yell at me when I was supposedly in trouble. Instead of it building the character he wanted, it now has me afraid of any kind of confrontation. As an eyeball when I get scolded at work. My mom practiced loving honesty, her phrasing, because she wanted me to grow to be a great person. By great person I mean someone who dressed and acted the way she thought a woman should. By loving honesty she meant putting me down and asking me daily why I have to be so weird or why can't you just be a girl, my clothing was all wrong. She routinely rolled her eyes and made fun of my interests, only handing out compliments when I showed some talent in drawing or singing. She truly thought she was just guiding me to be a better woman. I just learned never to be honest to her or to expect her to be interested in my life. That I had to obey them and obey the rules in the Bible. Dad was an Anglican minister. Safe to say I'm now an atheist agnostic, but that I didn't have to obey outside of those. It's messed me up in the sense I don't like authority and will give those in authority a mouthful if they bark orders at me, etc. Working hard. My dad ran his own manual labor business and starting at 13, he would drag me out to work with him after school till dark, and during the summer, I had to work from morning till night, under the scalding sun, busting my butt. They insisted it'd teach me to work ethic and working hard, and how to put in effort. Years later, I just hate and dread work altogether. My parents were really big into mean jokes and then doing the whole "it's just a joke, don't be so sensitive, grow a sense of humor already" when it hurt my feelings or I asked them to stop. All that did was blind me to when I was being offensive and destroy my ability to enforce healthy boundaries in my relationships. When they make fun of you, you need to get a sense of humor. But if you poke fun at them, that's disrespectful and you have to go to bed without dinner only to be woken up when your dad gets home so he can shout at you about it and send you off to bed without dinner a second time. My dad once pretended to walk out on the family forever to punish me for giving him lip. He did it so convincingly that I was genuinely scarred and a part of me still carries the lesson learned that the ones I love will abandon me if I screw up too much. For context, my dad was cold and distant and when he was around, was usually primarily interested in discipline and making sure I followed rules. He would shout furiously over small mistakes sometimes. If I tripped while running or lost a toy, he was only annoyed and would tell me in plain terms what I had done wrong. Sometimes he was affectionate instead, but basically, when he pretended to walk out forever it seemed totally in character for him. It was the late 90s and I was 7. We were watching the Tom and Jerry movie on VHS. There was a scene where Robin and her dad are walking in a forest, get caught in the rain and he gives her his jacket. I don't know what prompted me to say it, and young kids usually don't have a mental filter yet, but I turned to my dad and said, if that was us you'd just say, well, you should have brought a coat. I wasn't wrong. Dad, literally, well, if that's how you feel then I'll go live somewhere else. Proceeds to grab his coat and walk out the door, with me partly confused why he wasn't taking a suitcase but equally panicked and totally falling for it and screaming and crying for him not to go. All the while he's like, nope, too late now. Well, you shouldn't have said that by until he has opened the door and is standing in the porch, then suddenly decides to change his mind. Later I did wonder if he really meant it, but the event seared something in my brain and the damage was done. I didn't start actively believing the aforementioned lesson until later when other events piled on top to generate that belief, but it was definitely the root. That is honestly so heartbreaking. My mom was always concerned about my weight. At 5 feet 2 inches and 108 pounds I was told I was looking heavy. That stayed with me and to this day at 115 pounds I'm stressing about my weight. That one comment led to a lifelong eating disorder and obsession with being thin. Well, frick them, then. Made me go to church, one of the most Hellenistic ones they could find. They preached damnation more than they preached salvation. They showed us videos of heck and what happens to bad children. Then they proceeded to physically abuse us. One lady's kick was to get me sitting right in front of her desk while she worked, so she could keep hawk eyes on me. I would sit there for hours upon hours at a time, not being able to talk, move or get out of the chair, staring at this middle-aged woman with a beehive haircut mean mugging me the whole time. When I was just a kid, I told my close friends about my parents' fights. They were getting serious because I was scared and didn't know who to tell. When my sister found out, she told my mom, who proceeded to rip me a new one for potentially ruining the picture-perfect image of our family. Now that I'm older, I can't confide crap with people. I'm terrified of opening up. It really messes with you when you feel like you can't talk to anyone about your issues. I swear I'm okay right now. I know how that feels. My mom was the same way. I am glad you are okay, and there are times where you do feel like you are crazy but you want to scream. I am not crazy, haha. She hit me over the smallest things. Once when I was 7, she was cleaning my bag and found some pens there that weren't mine. She asked me if I stole them, and of course I said I didn't. I was a kid and very careless about my bag. There had been a couple of times when I had to look for my bag before going home. I had no idea whose pens they were, but she didn't believe me and proceeded to hit me really hard. I had bruises after. She said she just didn't want me to become a criminal when I grew up. My mom did the same thing. Then I became a kleptomaniac, and every time I went to any sort of store, I had to steal something. It was like I couldn't avoid it. Up until I was about 15, it was an every single time thing. Always little things though, like gum and stuff. We never talked about the ugly crap that happens in life. When relatives died, I would learn about it after months. When people I knew were ill, they'd hide it from me. When my grandmother was diagnosed with cancer, I was 15 when she passed. They didn't tell me it was cancer until after she passed. And I only learned what kind of cancer it was because I overheard a conversation between my mother and other grandmother. When my grandfather was put in a home, I only knew where he was because my cousin, who is 3 years younger than me, told me. Now I can't trust my parents when they say everything is fine, and I'm constantly worried that they might be hiding some heavy stuff from me. It sucks. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.